I want. This is just. I accidentally slept with my half brother. I just thought this is crazy. Cause what the fuck? How does this even happen? Yeah, this is just crazy.
All of that, though, our next guest's life was changed forever when she took an at-home DNA test.
Victoria Hill discovered that her biological father wasn't the man who raised her,
I would
but
be
her
so
mother's
sick.
fertility doctor.
And there was one more devastating twist when she found out that her ex-boyfriend was actually her half-brother.
As she shares this shocking story, Victoria is joining us live from
This is some
her
shit I would
home
never
in
have to. I couldn't
Connecticut.
tell nobody
Good morning
if this
to you,
was to happen to
Victoria.
me.
Thank you so much for
I would
coming
be
on the
sick.
show. Good morning. I wanted to start off by saying, first of all, you were looking into your DNA background, not because you suspected something, but because you've had medical conditions.
Yeah, there just had been some health things going on that I just was looking for some clarity on. You know, I was a little curious about, you know, heritage, and I had heard about the commercial DNA testing being able to provide a whole host of information. And so I thought it would be
Found out
helpful
she
and
was
maybe
pregnant,
clue me
they
into
was siblings.
some health clues in
Oh.
approaching my doctors with what I had going on. Never in a million years did I think I would find out all that I had.
So you never suspected this at all. So what happened the day when you got all the information back?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a few days. You know, I got the information, and I very quickly just went to go look at the health stuff, and I had seen some half siblings pop up, but I very quickly just dismissed it and thought it was an error. Just, you know, maybe it was some first or second cousins.
thought it
and
was
wasn't
an
accurate,
error?
and so I kind of pushed it aside. But then I kept getting an email from a woman who I later found out was my half sister, saying, you know, there's some information here. Let us know if you need or want to know more. And I, you know, kind of thought it was like a 23andMe kind of gimmick, trying to get me to purchase the next plan up. But as she continued to push, she said, you know, did your mother go to Yale Fertility Treatment Clinic to get help for fertility? And so when she had said that, it got my attention because I did know that much. I knew that my parents had struggled with fertility and went out to Yale to get help. And so she had my attention, and then she gave me the rest of the information, was that this doctor, my mother.
Is this part of that dude, the fertility doctor who was just impregnating the women with his semen? Is this part of that? Because isn't there a doctor that did that and like the whole town is pretty much his kids? Is this part of that? 69 kids? Oh my God.
Mother's fertility doctor was in fact my biological father.
See, I mean, it's an extraordinary thing to hear that, Victoria, from us sitting here. How did it feel for you to suddenly get that information?
It was pretty surreal. It definitely took a little while to set in. I have to say that growing up, there was a part of me that felt a little different or distant. I mean, we used to have a joke that between my father and I that the only thing that was similar was our hands. So it was, in some weird ways, it kind of clicked, but then, you know, it just seemed so bizarre, you know, in the different stages of it. Not only is it not the man who raised my biological father, but my mother's doctor that she went to for over 8 years of treatment trying to conceive, and then kind of bringing her the news and
Nice.
sharing that with her. I mean, she was not aware of this as well. So it was something that we kind of sat through together a bit.
The idea, I mean, it's extraordinary, the idea that the doctor that was treating your mum for fertility used his own specimen to inseminate her, and also, clearly, what has become more and more apparent, lots and lots of other women, too.
I mean, we know now over 80 doctors that have done this. And
So it was quite a
Jesus.
common practice. Were there no regulations about it, Victoria?
No, and there really still are not. And that's why we're fighting so more. And that's why I'm bringing this story out,
That's
is to raise
sick.
the awareness so that we can get some better laws and protections and regulations out there.
Your mum's doctor is called Dr. Caldwell. Have you ever spoken to him? I know he passed away quite recently, but did you ever speak to him? Did you ever find him? Did you ever go to his house?
Yes, absolutely. So a couple, I would say, days to a week after, I spent a lot of time trying to find information on him, and I figured out that
She
he lived
could
about
have,
45
Garza.
minutes
She
from me.
definitely
So I
could
got
have.
in my car one day and I drove to his house. And I didn't really have much of a plan, but as I got there, I just felt like my body was going through the motions of just, pull up the driveway, go to the door, knock on the door, and I did. And so his wife let me in, which was very kind. I can only imagine what was going through her mind.
I know. I already know.
And I
The wife like, you another one of them kids, ain't you? He your daddy too, huh?
talked to him, and that's where he very readily admitted that yes, this is something he did, and he did it for over probably 20 years. When you asked him how many times, he just kind of shook his head. He had no idea. And when you asked him why, it was
Wow.
he was in the business of making babies, and there wasn't a lot of remorse. There wasn't a lot of concern. It was just this very matter of fact way of answering.
So you had no sense of professional compromise or moral compromise over what he had done at all?
No, I mean, the impression that I got was just, your mother wanted a baby, she got a baby. Wow. It was just that this was, I believe he might, he was a big part of founding the Yale Fertility Clinic, and so this was his life, and
That's crazy.
I can only imagine,
Trying to be Genghis
obviously,
Khan.
The extreme measures that he went through
He
to
probably
make
do
this
got
program work,
thousands.
which it creates this like cognitive dissonance, because on one hand, everybody asks, like, aren't you happy to be alive? And your mother wanted a child and she got a child. But on the other hand, I didn't want to be a product of fertility fraud. My mother didn't consent to his sperm, and I didn't consent to having, a growing number of siblings that will continue to grow, especially if he really did donate for over 20 years.
So you just mentioned then half siblings. How many do you know you have right now? And I think you're in very close proximity to each other. I think 4 you went to high school with.
Wow.
Yeah, it's at 25 right now that we know of, and just every few months the number just continues to grow. I went to elementary school with a half sibling, that we just recently learned about, and there was 4 siblings in the same high school, and I mean, this was within a maybe 50-minute radius.
Wow.
And a lot of us are in New England still.
Goodness me. And of course, one of the things about this that is all the more jaw-dropping is you sat talking with 2 or 3 of your friends about what you had discovered, and then one of them, who happened to have been an ex-boyfriend, realised that the same thing had happened to him as well.
Yeah, it felt, we figured it out. There's a high school reunion, and I started sharing the information with some close friends, and fast forward to a dinner where some of us continued to get together. And it was at that time that, as I'm telling this story, my high school boyfriend and now friend kind of started to look.
Now, friend, that's your
he
brother.
was turning something over in his head because his mother had recently also told
She
him
said,
that.
now,
The
friend.
reason why
No,
him and
that's
his
your
brother, also
brother.
a really good friend of mine, his mother went out for fertility treatment with his father. And so Yale was kind of it at the time. So we just kind of assumed that she must have gone to the same place. And, he ultimately called his mother, and his mother confirmed that the same doctor had done her procedure. And so then it was a waiting game. And we all just kind of sat there in disbelief that this was something we were even entertaining. And we made jokes, but it just felt very surreal. And sure enough, within a couple of weeks, he sent me the screenshot that said, "You are my sister." And
Damn.
the mind-boggling thing about it was just, as he sent me this screenshot, it also, you have the notification on your phone from 23andMe, you have a new half-sibling. And so just that realization, felt like I was on the Truman Show. Like it's just one next thing that hits after another, and we still don't know what's to come.
No, it must have been terrifying. Just even that thought of, he's your half-brother who was your boyfriend, but then you also look to the future, and all of a sudden, of course, there are other children involved that are now first cousins, but you don't necessarily know who they all are or where they all are. How are you looking at the future
How many people
now,
in town don't
Victoria?
even know? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm doing this, because I want my daughter, who's 8 years old, she's very much aware, at her level as to what's going on, but I want her to be aware. I want her to know that she's going to have a lot of cousins, and we're going to have a lot of family members that,
20, what was it,
we can choose
25?
what we do with those relationships, whether or not we
brothers
want
and
to get
sisters?
close, but then also in dating and
Do
romantic
you know how many
relationships,
family reunion
it's
gonna be
important
lit?
for her and my
Hey, when I tell you the family reunion gonna be crazy. There's so many cousins, dog.
son to also be aware, and to all of us, all of the half siblings that I have and our children. I think there's about 50 first cousins that we know of in the New England area.
She used to host
right
So You
now.
Think You Can Dance.
But
Really?
And as Kat said earlier, Victoria, Dr. Caldwell passed away a few weeks ago. Has he ever faced any legal proceedings? Is Yale Fertility going to face any legal proceedings?
Yeah,
because, of course,
probably.
there's so many of you that have been affected, and you're trying to get the rules changed, aren't you?
Right, yeah.
That should be a rule,
there
though.
are some cases
Like
right
that-
now, but they're really not going anywhere because they can't. There's an issue of statute of limitations, current or non-existent, fertility fraud laws, which is why we're pushing so hard. There's 2 active suits right now, but again, I think it's kind of more of just trying to show that this wasn't okay, and allowing the victims to have a voice. But I unfortunately am not too optimistic about where the cases will actually go until there's better laws and protections in place.
We did reach out to Yale Fertility, but we haven't heard back from them. It's an extraordinary story, Victoria. You're very brave sharing it as well, but the importance of it is clear. So thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for taking time to hear this and help me raise awareness.
Thank you, Victoria.
100 or more
remarkable
kids.
story.
And no limits on the donation.
My thing is, so she took the test, right? Because she found out she was having some type of disease, right? So it was the disease from her dad that was a fertility clinic guy? And was he just spreading that disease, like, to all them kids? I don't even understand. What's the point in, like, did he need money, Nay? Or was he just doing it just so he could have 100-something kids? That's crazy.